I'm here with Bubba Page, and he is the founder of Influence.VC. How's it going, Bubba?
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm excited to really unpack a lot here. But before we get started, I'd like to start this off with your background. How did you get into business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I was a college student when I got involved in my very first venture. I had a few guys come and ask me to join their team. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Nobody in my family, no like relative was an entrepreneur. And we built an imported office furniture as college students. It was hilarious. We spent 2 years traveling the country, going to all these trade shows as these 20 something year olds that knew nothing about what we were doing. And yet we learned so much, so much. I ended up selling my ownership to my other partners and then starting my own company in 2009 and sold that one in 2020. But the original start was in college. And I think it's a beautiful place for people to start because you have no mortgage. You're typically not married. You're typically like life is easy and you have all these resources at the tip of your fingertips. All the professors want to help you. You've got mentorship. You've got all the college, what college has to offer. I was in Utah here at Brigham Young University, and they have a phenomenal entrepreneurship program. And we ended up taking fourth place one year and then third place the next year for like the entrepreneurship of the year onwards, which was
Nice,
cool.
nice.
Anyway, that was like the start. Good old college, make it happen.
Yeah, good old college. And I want to say a couple of episodes ago, we talked about accelerators and just how being around like-minded people can truly like move people in that direction where you're like, okay, I'm not an outsider. This is kind of a non-traditional path, but there's other people doing it. And I've always enjoyed hearing stories like that, where if you're in college, you're
Yeah.
around people that want to start up. It helps push you. It helps push you in the direction. So let's talk
Well,
about
it's
the
interesting. Well, I mean, talking about accelerators, I actually went through Techstars
yeah.
back in 2014 too. So, that's that world, getting started in college, having people that want to talk about entrepreneurship. Um, Obviously, there's books and resources that you can do, but unless you're doing it, you're
Mhm.
not truly learning what you could. And look, now that I've done it multiple times and have invested in a bunch of different companies, I've had exits and I've had failures. I've bootstrapped, I've raised. Like, it almost feels like the more you know about something, the more you know you don't know. Have you ever heard that
Yeah,
phrase?
that's right.
It's so true, and maybe it's just because I'm getting old now, but it's like that is a true statement. So I know as a young gun, I was uber confident, like, oh, I can change the world, which we all can. But it also gives you some perspective. The more you experience, and the more you learn, that there's so much more out there that we can all learn and grow from. So
Yeah.
maybe we can cover a couple topics today to help people out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good segue into let's talk about the first couple ventures that you said.
Yeah.
You said that you bootstrapped one, you raised for one, and let's talk about kind of the first success that you saw. Which one was that, and how did that sort of translate for you?
Yeah. So the first one was in college, and I sold to my partner. So I
Yep.
got I got a little bit of cash out of that. It wasn't much, but it was something that like I still chalk it up as a win. I ended up getting my first townhome from it, and luckily I was smart enough to like put it into something and not just blow it on big screen TVs and a motorcycle or something, which would have been fun, but maybe not as advantageous for the future. In 2009, it was called Launch Leads and an outsourced B2B sales company. So think of like a marketing agency, but in sales,
Hmm.
specific for the tech industry. And it was bootstrapped and just a profitable cash cow. So we built something that built an amazing lifestyle for my family. And what was fascinating is that in 2014, I ended up hiring a CEO to help run the day to day because I had this dream of raising venture capital and of going down that path of being a software entrepreneur, a venture backed software entrepreneur. And so I had this cash cow that's producing amazing profit that took care of all of our needs, our family, and then some. Um, it was beautiful business. But for some reason, the cover of magazines were always about these venture capital companies, the venture backed companies, and I thought that must be where I need to go, especially when I had this more services oriented company that had a 1 to maybe 5x multiple, depending on the growth, and these VC backed companies were 10x multiples. I thought I have to go there. So I ended up going out and raising venture and got accepted into the Techstars program in Boulder. Um, and through blood, sweat, and tears, like put 2.5 years in on a business that we had to shut down. And holy cow, like talk about a blow to my ego, to my emotional state. That was one of those things that just, man, it threw me for a loop. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about their failures enough, but that was one of those things that put me into, I would call it a depression, or even an anxiety point where I had never even felt before. Um, and so it's fascinating is I feel like I learned even more from that than I did from the success. Because that company that I hired the CEO for, we ended up selling it in 2020. And it was a win for my family, it was a win for him, it was a win for, all those that were involved. Um, but the failure in between was the one that really rocked my world. And I think entrepreneurs, look, if you're in it long enough, you're gonna have to have a failure. Like that's just part of being an entrepreneur. And I'm so glad I had it. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have happened, but I'm glad I did because I feel like I can relate to more entrepreneurs now on the investor side of writing checks into these companies. I I know the risk I'm getting involved in, and I can still show love to those entrepreneurs that maybe the deal doesn't pan out. And one of the best things that my investors told me when we did have to shut it down, they looked at me and said, "Look, Bubba, we know that you and your team did everything you could with what you had, um, and look, we still love you, and we would fund your next business. So like, don't let it destroy you or like." And it was interesting because I really was hurting. I almost had to figure out like, who am I? I always thought of myself as the entrepreneur, of winning these awards or growth or speaking at the different conferences or whatever it was. And so when the failure happened, it just threw me for a big loop.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, career wise, I ended up joining my now ex-wife, but wife at the time, and we ended up building these businesses around a social media following. So I went from like this B2B tech world for like a decade to being in the consumer space, specifically with creators and influencers. And so we learned, what was fun was to learn almost like an entirely new industry, consumer product, consumer tech. And with Influence.VC, that's where I focus investing in mostly is consumer tech, consumer product, and then leveraging the creator economy or the influencers that are out there to boost these companies we invest in.
Nice.
Um, that's the premise behind Influence.VC. And the learning from these, and these were the entities that we built ourselves, were all, we were able to self-fund these businesses, and so we were able to make them profitable. We were able to create demand through our social media following, and so it was a totally different ballgame than like the outbound sales approach of
Yeah.
B2B SaaS. Um, and so now it's uh, this unique background of B2B tech, now consumer with social, and this world is completely different than it was, a decade ago. With the advent I mean, look at what's happened in the last 10 years with creators and influencers and the dramatic impact they can have on a business. Even VCs, for the most part, don't fully understand or see most the power of those creators and what they can have when they join or partner with or create a product on their own.
Hmm.
So that's something that I play in a little bit
Totally.
more now.
Totally. Yeah. The idea of a creator creating a billion dollar company was foreign to many, and then now
Yeah.
it's like left and right. You see these brands popping up, and it's the distribution's there. Like that was a key learning that I had early on, was like, if even if you made the most amazing product ever, if you didn't have distribution, you were done. Like you had to be able to distribute whatever you were creating. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
You just had to figure out distribution. So that was the beauty or that is the beauty of the creator economy, is like you're building something when distribution's already there, ready to go. So I think
And
that's a
at a
great
much
place.
lower CAC. I mean, think about the
Oh
CAC
yeah,
when you've got a huge social following and you're not having to pay as much for ads, I mean, it changes the game. So, I challenge a lot, especially consumer product, consumer tech. I challenge them to see who could you partner with. What creator out there or influencer out there could you partner with? Most influencers or creators, they're not creating their own product yet. I think that's going to continue to increase, that they will do their own. But I think they're willing to partner with, and they're willing to join or even invest in. And the dramatic impact it can have on getting speed to market and brand awareness is huge.
hmm
Now, not all creators are created equally. And so some may have a higher conversion rate than others. And so it has to be the right type of product and the right timing, the right space with the right price point. So it's not it's not a perfect, it's not an easy science, but it is something that can be repeated over and over again, and we're going to see more and more of it. I don't think
for sure.
the end of that world is. I think it's just begun
hmm
of what we see in that space. But
Yeah. So the B2B outbound, you mentioned that you'd hired a CEO. You went out, raised money, did Techstars. You kind of stepped away from that business then. So you were like doing full on. Was that Outro? Was that the
yeah,
business? Okay, so you were focused
yeah,
on Outro, and the B2B business was just humming along in the background, like while you were while you were doing that. And then that one sort of, for everybody listening, the venture capital game is jet fuel, and it can explode more often than it can succeed, and that's just
yeah,
the the fun and craziness and stress of it all. But the cool part here that I'm picking up from the story is that you went, did this, explosive venture, and then at the same time there's this really kind of casual one in the background still running. And I
totally.
think that there's some sort of like subconscious wisdom there of you having that backup there. You had a
Yeah.
CEO running it so that you could go do this really kind of fun adventure. So kudos for that. I think that's pretty cool. And that one was the one that gets acquired. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was all by accident. I mean, I wish I could say I was so wise that I created this entire plan in my head. I definitely give it to the man upstairs who kind of helped to put everything, orchestrate everything and put it into place. Because a cash flow business, if I go speak to a university, for example, and I'm talking to student entrepreneurs, they're always like, what business should I start? Or how do I start this company? Or how do I get investor dollars? Um, and I look at them, I'm like, look, start a bootstrapped company first, especially if you can do a service-based company. Now look, some are going to go skyrocket and they're going to build a Facebook and they're college students and they're going to take off. But the majority of entrepreneurs are going to build simple, bootstrapped, self-funded companies that are service oriented. And that's the majority of the America's GDP are lifestyle businesses. And venture is such a tiny, small subset, even though it gets all the attention and it gets all the praise and it's super sexy. And I fell for that trap, right? I mean, I left this non sexy, uber profitable, service based lifestyle company because I thought that that's where I wanted to be. And, I'm grateful for life experiences sake that I was able to do both. But if I look back, if I would have stayed all in on that other one, could I have grown it even faster and bigger and sold it for more than when I hired a CEO? Now, don't get me wrong, he did great. We still made it to Inc. 5000 3 years in a row. And so it still went great. But like sometimes the unsexy businesses can be the most advantageous for the entrepreneur specifically. And look, I'm speaking as an investor as well. I tell people all the time who come to me for investment that you shouldn't, like, I'll point to them and say, you shouldn't raise. Like, for this business, you shouldn't take investor money. If you can do it and become profitable sooner rather than later, don't take my money. Like, you don't need to do that. And then you own all of the business with your partners or whatever. And you know, so I was a moderator. I was telling you this earlier, right? I was a moderator at a venture capital roundtable for Utah Business Magazine this morning. And so I'm sitting around a table of 20 incredible venture capitalists who are, legends in this mountain region. And part of the discussion that we had was to try and help educate entrepreneurs and to be able to say, like, look, here's the industry of venture capital. Here's how it works, so that the entrepreneur knows whether or not they should or shouldn't be talking to a venture capitalist. If an entrepreneur is listening and you're building a business, can the investor receive a minimum of 10x return on their money in the next 5 to 7 years? And if that's not possible, there's nothing wrong with your business. You may have a great, profitable lifestyle business, but it's not as venture backable. So don't worry about the venture capital stuff. Go build this killer business and make you $500,000 or $1 million a year for your family. There is nothing or more. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You may think that it's not as sexy because it's not getting on the cover of magazines every day. But the reality is, lifestyle businesses allow you, and I know you've got a couple of kids, I've got 8 children. It allows you to take care of your family in a way that sometimes venture-backed companies can't. Because the second you take money from a VC or an investor, you now have an obligation, a fiduciary responsibility to put that business first. That is your job. And so sometimes the family takes a back burner. Now, I try to look for entrepreneurs to back who have some semblance of a balance, and so that they can have some kind of a family relationship, because the worst thing for me is if they destroy their family on the way to success. That is a complete fail in my mind, right? But when you build a service-based, maybe lifestyle business, you are in complete control of your time. You're in complete control of your destiny. When you raise venture, you are a rocket ship, and you're going to either go and blow up, meaning blow up dead, or you're going to go and get acquired. But it's one or the other, and most of them are dead.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
Mm-hmm.
just again, for entrepreneurs listening, as a VC, the very, very rough numbers are essentially, if I invest in 10 companies, 3 are going to completely lose my money, gone, like dead in the water. 3 maybe give my money back, but no return whatsoever. Another 3 are going to give me a double or a single, like I may get, 1 or 2 or 3x return on my money. And then 1 maybe gives me that 10x return. Like, those are the expectations of most. Now, luckily, I've had a little bit better track record than that in my investments to be able to have more successes. But that's typically what people are looking for. And so, when an investor is writing a check, they have to think that you can give them a 10x plus return. And I just try to help educate entrepreneurs to know that you don't have to go down that route.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're going to go, and it's life-changing money if somebody can sell something for $1 million or 2 or 3 or $5 million, even 10 million. Like, you don't have to be a unicorn to completely change your life forever, and or even 100 millionaire. Like, it's a great goal. And look, by all means, go for it if that's your dream. But I think people underestimate the value of earning $500,000 to $1 million a year in cash flow. So
Mm-hmm.
let me give you the perspective, though, because if the entrepreneur, you're thinking like, I'm building this business, I got cash flow, I'm looking for an exit. Think about what's going to happen. So I sold my business. Guess what I did? I got all this cash. And what's the immediate thing I did? Look, I didn't go buy a Lambo. Look, if you've read the Millionaire Next Door book, if you hadn't, you should. Like, you don't need to buy the Lambo. You don't need to have a private jet. Like, you should build a lifestyle for a family. So how do you do that? It's through cash flow. So what did I do? I took my earnings from that sale of the company, and I went and invested it in order to get more cash flow. So it's like, wait a
Mhm.
second. Entrepreneurs who sell their business most of the time are going to take those proceeds and they're going to turn around and try and find investments, some level of diversification, but they want to produce the same level of cash flow they had when they had their company.
Yeah.
So if you were getting paid 250 grand a year or $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, you're essentially looking for investments to do that for you. And some people are like, well, wait a minute. If I already had that within my company, then why would I ever sell? That's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
So, like, if
Yeah.
you are building a lifestyle business and you have that type of cash flow, um, and you can live well below your means, and you can say, like, okay, and I'm just going to put a number out there. So, $500,000 is coming to my family from this cash flow business. Can I live, with 150 or 250 grand and then go and invest the rest to start producing that cash flow so that at some point the cash flow is above and beyond what I'm earning from the company or what I need to cover my nut? That's called financial freedom. That's when you
Hmm.
don't need a job. That's when you don't need to go to work every day. And you can do whatever the heck you want, whenever the heck you want, with whomever you want, because you've created cash flow from a diversified set of assets. And a lot of times people do that through lifestyle businesses. Anyway, I'm on a soapbox and I apologize.
All
But
good. All good.
I just feel like when people think of venture capital, they think
Hmm.
that's the end all be all. And I know that there are entrepreneurs here who know that there are many ways to financial freedom. I think that's usually why people become an entrepreneur. They want freedom of their time, they want freedom with their money, and they want freedom with their families. There's a lot of ways to go about doing it. And
Agreed.
I've lived
Agreed.
in both areas, and lifestyle is not a bad way to go.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I like that perspective of basically replacing what you just had with a bunch of different uh, income streams is quite a mental gymnastics when maybe you don't need to maybe you don't need to take the leap initially. But I think real quickly before we get to the finale of unpacking, I'd love to talk about timing and preparedness for people that are listening to this that are thinking about selling. We sort of just talked about a counter to selling as to why not to potentially. But in your experience, why was it the right time for you to sell that
Yeah.
bootstrap business?
You're gonna hate this answer. This was a God-given timing. So here's what happened. Let me tell you, when I exited that company, I got the wire on Friday, March 6th, 2020.
Whoa.
If anybody was around, Monday.
Yeah.
And then my twins were born. So again, 8 kids. I have twin boy girl twins at the very end. On Sunday, my twins were born in the hospital. Monday, COVID shut down the world.
Hmm.
If that transaction, that wire, had not hit my bank account on that Friday, the transaction would have never gone through. It wouldn't have happened because
Yeah.
COVID completely shut the world down. Now, could I have known that? Of course not. I did not know that that was going to happen. So, and the deal itself took a year to take place. But what I would say about timing is, as an entrepreneur, you need to realize you have to leave, in my opinion, you have to leave some money on the table because the person buying you, acquiring you, has to know that there's still meat on the bone for them to scale.
Hmm.
Now, if you can sell to a strategic buyer and they can see that your business plus their business isn't 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 3 because of efficiencies or strategic value, that's your ideal buyer. You know what I mean? And then you've got private equity, right? So, and then you can sell through other local or whatever it is. But if you think about, a strategic buyer is going to be your highest valuation typically, because they can see the greatest level of increase when they buy you to what they can do with you. And then private equity is probably a little bit less. They're not going to give you as much value because guess what? They need to see that return for their investors as well. They're going to want to buy you and within 3 to 5 years spin you out with a 3 to 4x, 3 to 5x exit.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
just be thinking in your mind, you need to be selling when there's still room to grow. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like, well, I don't want to sell yet. My business still has so much growth to have. That may be true. I've also seen a lot of founders who get, whatever it is, a $50 million offer. And they're like, heck no, I'm not selling until I'm $100 million offer. And then their business blows up and is dead. And they had something and they let it go. A mentor of mine said, if anybody offers you 1 million of anything, take it. Now, that's with a grain of salt, and that was like 15 years ago. So, 1 million of something isn't worth as much as it was 15 years ago as it is today. But I think the concept of it is, if you have the chance to sell, just know that you are in the top 1% of 1% entrepreneurs. That if you have that opportunity, and the numbers make sense.
Hmm.
That's a pretty unique opportunity that most entrepreneurs will never have.
Hmm.
So, I give you these counter arguments of, if you've got cash flow, why would you sell? And then I've got this counter argument is, if you get a good enough offer, and a good enough means, you know, reasonable, not out of this world. Don't wait for this lightning in a bottle to strike, because most of the time it won't happen. Is to take something that's off the table and change your life. For most people, if they were smart with their money and they sold, and let's say they netted, after taxes or whatever, they netted 1, 2, 3, $5 million. Some of you might say, there's no way, I'm not selling for that. That's not enough. My minimum is $10 million. The reality is, you may or may not get that $10 million at some point. And if you've got five now, what could you do with that? Could
Hmm.
you rebuild another business? Could you invest it and create cash flow? Could you take the time that your family needs for you to be with them? Especially if it's not a profitable business and you are looking to fundraise again. If you've got the cash flow, then so there's a lot of different circumstances to look at. But I truly believe uh, founders should look at an offer if they get it, and if it can change your life for the better, where you can have a better lifestyle with your family. To me, I think you're going to be on your deathbed and not worry as much about, did I sell at the right time or not? You're going to say, did I spend enough time with my kids? And did I create the relationships in my life that really mattered? You're not going to think about how much money you have left in the bank. I just think there's a legacy that we're all trying to leave here. And yes, look, I love financial freedom just like the next guy. And do I want to leave a legacy that's outside of my own family? Of course. Do I want to have an impact on the world where I made a dent? And look, for me, I want to bring people to God. I want to make an impact on people's self reliance and abundance. Like, these are my life mission and goals. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I took care of my family, my kids,
Hmm.
that I have relationships that matter. And if you're grinding so hard that you're missing out on these relationships and your family and your kids, to me, it's not worth it. And I know I'll have contradictory opinions here, and that's okay. For me, that's what I desire, is that I want those things at the end of my life, that I can be proud of, the relationships with my children, my partner, and my family.
Hmm.
And then above and beyond, I think it's great to have a legacy outside of that. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
entrepreneurs, we drive hard, we grind, we overcome obstacles like nobody else. But sometimes we might lose perspective sometimes.
Totally, totally, and couldn't agree more. And that chapter of life is often one that comes up with timing. Everybody's different. If you have co-founders, everybody's in different chapters. It's timing is a hot topic. A lot of people have different takes on it, but I like the approach, that the characteristics that it takes to get to something like an exit, the type of person you have to become. Often family and stuff like that can get lost in the process there. So totally on the same page. That takes us to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Bubba 10 years ago?
Oh, what would I know now? Okay, if what I know now, I would tell Junior Bubba. 10 years ago, God has a plan for you, and that plan is better and than you could ever imagine. Even though you're going to go through hell and come out of it a better person. So I would tell Bubba 10 years ago to trust in that plan, even when it doesn't go the way you think it should. And for example, 10 years ago, well, nine ish, I had to shut down that company.
Hmm.
That was not part of my plan in any way, shape, or form. Not part of my plan. I can look back now and I can be grateful for it. I can be grateful for it. It put me on a trajectory from a personal, spiritual, like emotional sense that I would have never received if that would have been an exit. If I would have sold that company, I don't think I would have had the self reflection or the desire to heal my inner soul as much as if I didn't have to deal with that failure.
Hmm.
Last year, I had to go through a divorce. That's miserable. I don't wish that upon my worst enemy for somebody to have to go through that. I would never want that, to happen, especially with 8 kids. And so, did I think that was part of my plan? Hell no, right? Like that was not in my outlook or what I wanted in my life. But I can look back and I can say, look, I'm a believer, and so I look at God's hand in my life. I try to look at it every day and see how His hand has come into my life. And I feel like although uh, He didn't force those things to happen in my life, He allowed them to happen to help create the human that I'm supposed to become. And so I look at when bad things happen to good people. That's a question people give all the time. Why would God allow bad things to happen to good people? I truly believe it's for our own good. It's for us to become the type of person we're meant to become in this world. And whether that means financial success or not, I think God wants us to be successful. I think He wants us to have financial means taken care of. But is that His ultimate goal for me to become a billionaire? I don't think so. I think He wants me to have as much impact for good and to bring people back to Him as much as I can. And sorry for getting so spiritual here or religious, whatever you want to call it. But if I'm being real and authentic, like that to me is what I would want to tell that person 10 years ago
Hmm.
is to say, look, life isn't going to happen the way you thought it's going to be. And that's okay. Because if you look at these trials and challenges and ask the question to your maker, what am I supposed to learn from this? Not get upset, not shake your fist, but say, okay, God, this happened. What do I need to learn? And how can I help other people from that? And, I took an opportunity to be here with you on the podcast because I feel compelled to share part of this story with others.
Hmm.
And the deeper meaning around my life has come because of that connection with the big man upstairs. And
Nice.
knowing that entrepreneurship to me is it's a gift I feel like God's given me. I feel like it's an asset, it's a skill that He's given, and I feel like I can impact a lot of people for good by teaching entrepreneurship and investing, and hopefully I can bring people to more abundance through that. But the ultimate goal is so that they can see His hand in their life, and I can see it in my own life. So um, that may or may not be what you wanted to hear, but I feel like for me, that's the message that I would want my 30 year old self to hear, and to find faith in that process and knowing that it's all for my good, even when you're in the depths of hell. of having to come out of a company that you had to shut down or going through a divorce, some of those hard things that come to your life. Um, God's still there, and He wants you to learn. And He wants you to turn to Him. And maybe I needed a few of those, failures, you call it, to be able to start to rely on Him more. And maybe people don't have to go through that if they hear this message. Maybe they can turn to Him without having to go through some of those trials and challenges. Um, what there's a scripture that talks about basically, uh, blessed are those who humble themselves and turn to Him. I'm butchering the quote. Um, Blessed are those who are compelled to be humbled, meaning they have to go through hell to be humbled. But even more blessed are those who are just humble people, and they're willing to hear and listen and act on the inspiration that they feel in their heart to do good. And that's my message, my friend. I don't
Nice.
know if the audience here wants to hear that, but that's what I'm going to
Well,
share.
it's individual for everybody. That's kind of the
Yeah.
magic of the show. Everybody has their own advice for their younger self, and it was well said. I guess the last bit here is real quickly, what are you working on now, and where can
Yeah.
people learn more about Influence.VC?
Oh, thanks, man. Well, look, I'm active on Instagram, so you can find me at Bubba Page. I'm active on LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not too many Bubbas on there, but Bubba Page. Um, Influence.VC is the venture capital arm. It's a syndication. It's on AngelList, so anybody that's a accredited investor can join the syndicate. You can find it on AngelList and join. Doesn't cost you anything. You can see the deals that we're doing. And if you want, you can invest alongside with me and a few hundred other investors. But what I'm working on right now is a lot of this educational opportunity. I feel like I've been compelled to start teaching and preaching a little bit more on entrepreneurship. So I have thebusinessbootcamp.com.
Cool.
I'm helping entrepreneurs go from 0 to 1, and a little bit of coaching, a little bit of programs, a little bit of that. So thebusinessbootcamp.com is one. And then soon I'll be launching fatherhoodmovement.com. And, I feel like there's a little bit more of that depth of growth that we as fathers can have as parents, um, and being better prepared, almost running a fatherhood operating system. We have like an entrepreneur operating system, EOS.
Hmm.
I'm creating a father operating system, an FOS, and a book soon to come out. I shouldn't say soon, but in the near future, um, to teach and preach about what a father operating system could look like to still be a phenomenal entrepreneur, taking care of your family, raising the children the way you should, living a healthy lifestyle that can benefit you in more ways than just financial. So be on the lookout. If you're on my socials, you'll see it as it's coming out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Bubba mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on, Bubba.
Great to be here, man. Talk soon.